I'm sitting at my desk in my dorm room in Boston with my headset on, and the glow of my monitor washing the wall in that dull bluish light. I've got one of those GTA-like open-world games running, the kind where you can ignore the missions and just drive around, wander into weird corners of the map, and mess with NPCs because it's easier than thinking about anything real. I'd been playing for a while without really keeping track of time, not grinding, not trying to win anything, just roaming. Just doing dumb stuff and letting the game fill the space in my head. At some point, I hit pause to pull up the menu. I was going to save, or maybe just check my settings. I wasn't thinking about it. It was muscle memory. A couple clicks, a normal list of options, the kind of screen you stop seeing after the first week you own a game. That's why it stuck out. In the corner of the menu, down where the small text always lives, there was a line that didn't belong. Not a pop-up, not a notification. Just a plain UI line like it had always been there. It had my name in it, Thomas. All caps, clean font, the same style as everything else on the menu. Like it was labeling something, like it was confirming something, not a username, not a profile. Just my first name sitting in a place that should have been generic. It was the kind of text you'd expect to say player or autosave or slot 1, something that doesn't know you. I blinked a few times like I could force my eyes to re-render it. I moved my mouse a little, hovered different parts of the menu, waiting for it to change or disappear. It didn't. What? It didn't sound like fear. It sounded like I'd read a word wrong on a sign. I backed out of the menu and went back in. Same line, same spot, same name. I stared long enough that the game music started feeling too loud, like it was trying to cover up the fact that something was off. I pulled up my account settings. I checked the profile screen. I checked anything that would show the player name. My account wasn't my real name. My handle wasn't Thomas. I hadn't typed Thomas into anything. Not when I installed it, not when I signed in, not in a save file. I didn't even use my real name on stuff I cared about, let alone a game. I quit out to desktop. The game closed like normal. The room got quieter. I could hear someone's TV through the wall and the faint hiss of the radiator, that normal dorm soundtrack. I sat there for a second with my hand still on the mouse, like I was waiting for my computer to do something else. Then I launched the game again. Same loading screen, same little animation, same menu. I went straight to the pause screen and pulled it up like I was checking a bruise. The line was still there. Thomas. I didn't move for a long time. Not because I was scared, because my brain kept trying to fit it into something ordinary and it couldn't. I just sat there in that blue light, staring at my own name like it was an object someone had set down on my desk when I wasn't looking. Before any of that, my life was simple in the boring way. Class, deadlines, a small dorm room, and a brain that wouldn't shut up unless I gave it something dumb to chew on. I'm a senior, and I'm running out of time in a way that's hard to explain without sounding dramatic. Not because something is about to explode, just because everything that's supposed to start after graduation is already pressing down on me while I'm still here. Everyone keeps asking what I'm doing next. People throw around words like offer, internship, plan, savings, lease. Like you can just pick a life off a shelf. I'm behind on things that matter, paperwork, deadlines, emails I've read and never answered. A couple bills that hit my account at the wrong time and forced me into that quiet math you do in your head, the kind where you pretend you're not worried but you are. I've got this constant low-grade guilt that sits in my chest even when I'm doing nothing, especially when I'm doing nothing. The dorm doesn't help. It's small. It's always too warm or too cold. The walls are thin enough that you learn the rhythms of strangers without meaning to. Doors slam. Someone laughs in the hall like it's their job. Someone plays the same song on repeat through a speaker that's not even good. The bathroom down the hall smells like disinfectant, trying to cover up something else. There's always a half-empty takeout bag on somebody's desk, always a pile of laundry that's clean but not folded, always a charger snake across the floor waiting to catch your foot. I share the room with Evan and Miles, and that's as normal as anything in my life. Evan is loud in an effortless way. He says what he thinks, and he doesn't sit in silence unless he's asleep. He can make 5 minutes feel like a party, even if we're just sitting there looking at our phones. Miles is quieter, but he's always processing something. He's the kind of guy who explains things even when nobody asks, not because he's trying to show off, but because he honestly believes everything has a reason that can be found if you look in the right place. Jade isn't a roommate, but she's around enough that she might as well be. She'll stop by after class, drop her bag on my chair like she owns it, steal one of Evan's snacks without asking, and then judge all of us with her eyes. She's blunt. She's not mean. She just doesn't play along when we're pretending something isn't stupid. The only place my brain feels quiet is in that game. Not because it's deep or meaningful, because it's simple. You load in, you exist, and nothing you do has consequences beyond the screen. It's a GTA-like open world thing. Driving, walking, random side activities, NPCs milling around like the city has a pulse even when it doesn't. I don't really do the missions. Missions feel like work. I already have enough of that. I roam. I mess around. I treat it like a stress ball. It's one of those games that makes you feel like you can take your frustration and pour it into harmless chaos. You can cut across traffic. You can bump into people on the sidewalk. You can do little mean things that don't matter, and the world resets like it never happened. When Evan catches me playing, he always says the same thing, like it's a joke that stays funny because he believes it. "You're still on that game?" He says it from his bed without even sitting up. "Yeah, it helps." He'll grin like that's the most relatable thing in the world, and then he'll watch over my shoulder. He likes when I do dumb stuff, not because he cares about the game, but because it's something happening, and dorm life is mostly waiting. Miles tries to keep it grounded. "It's just a sandbox, man." He says that like he's talking me down from a ledge, even when I'm not near one, like he's reminding himself more than me. The way I play started out normal and then drifted. I realized pretty fast that messing with NPCs was more entertaining than anything the game wanted from me. It wasn't even about being cruel. It was about seeing how far the illusion went before it broke. If you follow someone for long enough, do they notice? If you block a sidewalk, do they reroute or do they clip into you and keep walking? If you keep honking a horn near the same person, do they react the same way every time? Evan saw me doing it one night and laughed so hard he had to lean against the bunk bed. "Bro, you're bullying pixels." I didn't look away from the screen when I answered. "It's not that deep." Jade came in during that and just stared at the screen for a few seconds, like she was trying to decide if she should say something. "Why are you like this?" I shrugged because there wasn't a good answer. I didn't want to tell her I liked it because it made me feel in control. I didn't want to admit that I was taking out stress on code, so I kept it light. "It's just a game." Most nights, it really wasn't. It was a way to burn off energy until my eyes got heavy. It was a routine that didn't ask me anything. That's what I needed. And the game had the kind of small problems you expect from something that big and messy. Little glitches that you'd normally ignore, stuff that felt more annoying than spooky. Sometimes the sound would lag behind the action by half a second, not all the time, just enough to make you adjust. A car horn would blare after the car had already passed. A footstep would hit a beat late. It felt like the audio engine was catching up. Sometimes an NPC would freeze in place for a second too long, not a full crash. More like a pause, like they were waiting for a line to load. Then they'd continue like nothing happened. Evan would point at it and go, "See? Broken." Miles would say it's probably memory streaming. Sometimes the camera would snap when it shouldn't. A tiny tug in the aim, like the game had decided on its own what I should be looking at. It was subtle, easy to blame on settings, on a controller drift, on anything except the idea that the game was doing it on purpose. Those were the kinds of things you chalk up to patches and updates, and the fact that nothing works perfectly anymore. Even in a world built from code, you're used to a little friction. So when I noticed those glitches, I didn't treat them like warnings. I treated them like background noise. Just the normal imperfections of something designed to run on 1,000 different machines in 1,000 different dorm rooms for 1,000 different burned-out people who needed to shut their brain off for a while. It started because one NPC didn't blend in. That game has people everywhere. Sidewalk crowds that don't really crowd. Drivers that honk on a loop. Someone always standing at a corner like they've been waiting for a bus since launch day. After a while, you stop seeing them as individuals. They're just motion, just noise. You can mess with them and get the same handful of reactions back, like you're tapping a vending machine. This one didn't feel like a vending machine. I noticed it near a crosswalk under a street light that made the pavement look slick even though it was just the game's shine. The model was too clean. Not shiny. Clean. Like the textures had more resolution than the rest of the block. Fabric that looked like fabric instead of a pattern. Skin that had tiny, uneven spots. A face that didn't look like it came from the same tray as everyone else's. It wasn't doing anything special. It was just standing there, half-turned, like it was listening to something off-screen. And I remember thinking, for one dumb second, that it looked present, like it was occupying the space instead of decorating it. So I did what I always do. I aimed my knight at it. I walked my character right up into its personal space. I blocked its path. I circled it. The usual stuff that makes NPCs cough out a line and shuffle away. It didn't shuffle. It didn't spit out a canned insult. It just waited. Not frozen. Not stuck. Waiting. It shifted its weight like it was deciding. Then it moved, but not away from me. It stepped to the side and kept its face angled so it could still track me. That's what got under my skin. The tracking. The timing. It felt less like a trigger and more like a choice. I backed up and tried again from a different angle. Same thing. I ran past it and stopped short, like I was trying to startle it. It turned at the exact moment that would have made sense if it was annoyed with me, not if it was following a script. Then the camera did something it wasn't supposed to do. I hadn't pressed anything cinematic. I hadn't hit any prompt. I was just moving. And the view yanked forward into a tight zoom, close enough that the NPC's face filled most of the screen, close enough that I could see tiny details around the eyes and mouth that the game didn't bother giving anyone else. The zoom held for a beat. Not long. Just long enough for my brain to register that it wasn't my choice. Then it snapped back to normal like it had never happened. I sat there with my hand still on the mouse, waiting for the game to cough out an explanation. It didn't. No icon, no tutorial, no mission marker, nothing that would make it a feature. I told myself it was aim assist, or some weird camera setting, or a bug that only happened near that intersection. That's what you do. You grab the first boring reason, and you try to stuff the moment into it. But it happened again later that night, and it happened at the worst possible time. I set up one of my little annoyances, the kind I'd run on any NPC just to see the same predictable loop. I pushed it a bit. I expected the NPC to walk off or get loud or do nothing. Instead, right as it turned toward me, the camera dragged itself forward again. This time it wasn't a snap. It was a slow pull, like a hand tightening a lens. The NPC's face filled the screen again. The expression wasn't exaggerated. It wasn't scary. It was just tight, annoyed, like a person trying not to show how much they hated you. I felt my shoulders lift and my mouth moved before I thought about who was listening. "Did you see that?" I asked, still staring at the screen. Evan's chair rolled up behind me. I hadn't even heard him get out of bed. "Do it again." Evan sounded entertained, like he'd just walked in on a good clip. So I did. I tried to make it happen on purpose. I backed off, looped around the block, came back. Same NPC, same street, same weird sense of it being planted there. I poked at it again, and the camera pulled in. I changed the order of things. I waited longer. I rushed it. I tried to trigger the zoom with other NPCs. Nothing. Only that one. Evan leaned closer, grinning like this was a secret. I wasn't grinning. I was watching the edges of the screen, trying to figure out what I was missing. Bugs repeat. They break the same way every time. This didn't break the same way. It kept shifting by a few degrees. I did something simple. I stopped moving entirely and turned the camera away, like I was refusing to look. The view drifted back on its own, slow and steady, until the NPC was centered again. I felt my fingers go light on the mouse. Miles sat up on his bed, blinking hard like he'd been dragged out of sleep by the tone of my voice. "That's weird." Miles didn't laugh when he said it. That was the moment it turned into a project. Not a story, not a joke, a project. Miles started throwing out the most reasonable explanations in the most reasonable order. He told me to check the settings. I did. He told me to toggle aim assist. I did. He told me to switch camera sensitivity and FOV and anything that sounded like it could explain a forced zoom. None of it changed the behavior. He told me to try a different save. I loaded an older one. The world changed. Time of day changed. My location changed. The NPC was still there when I drove back to the intersection. The camera still pulled in when I got close. Evan kept egging it on, like the answer was hidden in repetition. I'd run the scenario again and again, trying to isolate a trigger. Distance, angle, speed. Whether I was sprinting or walking, whether I was looking at the NPC or looking past it, whether I bumped into it or just hovered nearby. Every time I thought I'd found the rule, it slipped. Sometimes the zoom hit instantly like a snap to attention. Sometimes it waited until the NPC turned. Sometimes it felt like the game was giving me a chance to look away before it insisted. Miles got quieter. He started watching my hands instead of the screen, like he was trying to catch me faking it. At one point, the camera pulled in so hard, so suddenly, that I flinched back from the monitor. "Did you see that?" I said, sharper than I meant to. Evan didn't blink. "Do it again." He said it like he wanted to prove something to himself. I ran it again. Same NPC, same corner, same pull. That's when I started trying the fixes that felt more serious, the ones you do when you're running out of other explanations. Offline mode. If the game was doing something server-side, if it was streaming behavior or pulling an event, cutting the internet would break it. That was Miles's theory. It was the kind of theory that makes you feel better because it turns the problem into code. I switched the game to offline. I killed the dorm Wi-Fi on my PC. I made sure nothing was connected. I loaded back in. Same intersection, same NPC, same camera pull. Miles had me verify files, the whole slow scan that's supposed to catch corruption and replace missing data. We restarted the game clean. We restarted my drivers. We changed window to full screen and back. We unplugged everything and plugged it back in like we were doing a ritual instead of troubleshooting. Nothing broke the pattern. If anything, the pattern got easier to hit. Like the game was learning what I was trying to do with it, even though that made no sense. It wasn't supposed to learn. It was supposed to be a thing that ran the same way every time you pressed the same buttons. Then I noticed something else, and I hated how normal it felt when I first noticed it. The game kept pulling me back toward that area even when I wasn't trying to go there. Not with a marker, not with a mission, just with drift. I'd decide I was done with it and drive across the map. I'd tell myself I was going to mess around somewhere completely different. I'd take a few turns, get distracted by traffic, maybe check my phone for a second, then look up and realize the streets around me felt familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I wasn't teleporting. I wasn't losing time. I was just arriving at the same part of the city like my choices were bending. I tried to fight it once. I picked a direction and held it, stubborn, like it was a dare. 10 minutes later, I was back near the intersection anyway, and I couldn't honestly point to the exact turn where it happened. That made me feel stupid, like maybe I was just tired, like maybe I was just on autopilot. But the moment I saw that NPC again, standing like it had never moved, the camera tightened on its own, as if the game had been waiting for me to look. I felt my jaw clench. Then the audio did something small and quiet that didn't belong in any of our explanations. It wasn't a jump scare. It wasn't loud. It wasn't distorted. It was just a soft voice threaded through my headset like it had always been part of the mix. Thomas. Just my name. Not shouted, not emotional. Close enough that it sounded like someone leaning in. My hand went cold on the mouse. "Did you hear that?" I asked, and I hated how thin my voice sounded. Evan frowned like I'd just accused him of something. "Hear what?" Evan asked. Miles didn't look at Evan. He kept staring at the screen, his face flat, listening for something he wasn't getting. "Nothing. I heard nothing." Miles said it like a report. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. I wanted that to be true so badly it made me angry. But I knew what I'd heard. It wasn't a random sound. It wasn't a glitchy syllable. It was my name, clean and clear, placed into my headset like someone had tested the mic. Evan tried to laugh it off and couldn't make it land. Miles started listing possibilities fast, because that's what he does when fear shows up, and he needs it to be solvable. Audio bleed, a background app, a notification, someone in the hall, anything. Jade texted me around then, asking if we were still up, and I didn't know how to answer without sounding insane. Evan grabbed my phone and typed something stupid back. Jade showed up anyway, a little later, hair messy, hoodie on, eyes half open like she'd been dragged here by worry instead of curiosity. She took one look at my face, and the way Miles wasn't joking anymore, and she didn't even ask what she'd missed. "Stop messing with it." Jade's voice was low, like she didn't want to wake the whole floor. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy to make it a joke. I just nodded once, like my body had already decided. I quit out of the game so fast my fingers slipped on the keys. The city vanished. The menu vanished. The sound cut off. The dorm room came back in full, all at once. The radiator hissed. Someone's shower ran down the hall. A door closed. Normal life still rolling. The monitor went dark enough to show my reflection, faint and warped in the smudges. Evan and Miles were behind me. Jade was standing near the doorway with her arms crossed, watching me like I might do something dumb. I stared at the black screen for a long time, waiting for the urge to laugh or explain or prove it was nothing. Nothing happened. And the worst part wasn't that I'd heard my name. It was how quiet it had been when it said it, like it didn't need to raise its voice to make sure I listened. I stopped playing after that, not because I made some brave decision. I just left the icon alone. I went to class, I ate, I answered a couple of emails I was behind on. I sat in the library and pretended I could focus. I tried to act normal in the specific way you do when you're hoping normal will rub off on you. But without the game filling the noise in my head, the dorm felt louder. The walls were thinner. The hallway sounded closer. Every random sound had a shape now, like my brain was trying to turn it into a message. A few nights later, I walked out to grab something quick. I told myself I needed air, that I needed to stop pacing in my own room. Boston at night can feel clean and empty in the wrong places. The sidewalks shine under streetlights when there's been a little rain. You get these stretches where it's just your footsteps and the distant rush of a main road you can't see. I wasn't anxious. I keep coming back to that. It wasn't the shaky kind of fear. It was the feeling of being selected. It started as heat at the back of my neck. That instinct that somebody's eyes are on you, even if you can't see them. I adjusted my hood. I changed my pace. I didn't pull my phone out. I started watching reflections as I passed windows, not because I thought I'd see anything, but because I needed something to do with my focus. Half a block later, I caught a glimpse of a figure under a streetlight farther ahead. It was standing in a way that made my stomach dip. Too still, too balanced. Weight-centered, arms down, like it wasn't tired. The clothes were wrong in the same way. The shape of the jacket, the way it sat on the shoulders, the dark pants that didn't wrinkle when it should. The posture was what hit me hardest. It looked like a pose, not a stance. I slowed without meaning to. The figure didn't move toward me. It didn't wave. It didn't do anything dramatic. It just stayed there, facing slightly off like it had been placed to be seen. My mouth opened and the words came out on their own. No. No. I said it low, like I was trying not to wake the street. I forced my legs to keep going, because stopping felt like admitting the street belonged to it. I didn't run. I just walked faster and kept my eyes forward like there were people watching me. When I looked back, it was gone. Not walking away, not turning a corner. Gone. I told myself it could have been anyone, a guy waiting for an Uber, a student in a hoodie, my brain seeing a pattern because it wanted one. I repeated those thoughts like a list while I went back inside, letting the warm lobby and the noise of other people hit me. Upstairs, the hallway outside my room felt too long. When I opened the door, Evan was on his bed scrolling. Miles was at his desk with earbuds in. Jade was in the room too, sitting in my chair like she owned it, legs crossed, phone in her hand. She looked up, and her expression changed immediately, like she could tell something was on me. I tried to set my keys down like my hands weren't shaking. Evan noticed anyway. He always noticed. He sat up, eyes bright in that half-joking way he had when he thought I was about to tell a story. "You're messing with me, right?" Evan asked, like he was already smiling on the inside. I stared at him, then at Miles, then at Jade. My throat felt tight. I didn't want to say it. Saying it made it heavier, but the words pushed out. I swear I saw him. Jade's phone went dark in her hand. She set it down slow. Miles pulled one earbud out and stood up, like his body had decided this was real before his head agreed. I told them what I'd seen without using the word NPC. I described the clothes, the stillness, the way it stood like it had never learned how to get bored. Evan's smile faded. Miles looked at the door, then at my desk, then back at the door like he was mapping routes. Jade didn't ask questions. She just watched me, jaw tight, like she'd already decided I'd taken this too far. Miles spoke first, trying to put a lid on it. Okay, we're not doing this." He said it like a boundary line. Jade nodded once and pointed her chin at my computer corner. "Shut it down, for real." I wanted to say it wasn't even on. I wanted to say I hadn't touched it, but then the hallway made the decision for me. Footsteps, slow, one set, coming closer, not the usual shuffle of someone passing by, not a group, just measured steps that sounded like they were counting the carpet squares. All four of us went quiet. The footsteps stopped right outside our door. Evan's eyes went wide. Miles didn't move. Jade stood up from my chair without making a sound and stepped closer to the door, not to open it, just to be near it. Then the doorknob turned once, slow. Not rattled, not yanked. Turned with care, like whoever had their hand on it wasn't rushed. Jade lifted her hand toward us like a stop sign. "Don't open the door." Her voice was low and steady, and that steadiness scared me more than panic would have. The knob settled back. Silence. I waited for a knock, a voice, anything human, nothing. Then my monitor woke up. The screen flashed from black to that dim gray glow like it was searching for a signal. It lit our faces just enough to make everyone look sick and pale. I hadn't touched it. Nobody had touched it. My chair was pushed back. The desk was clear. Miles stepped closer with his hands half raised like he was approaching something that might bite. "I didn't touch it." Miles said it fast, defensive, because the room suddenly felt like it needed someone to blame. Evan whispered without whispering, eyes locked on the door. He didn't say anything that counted as words. He just breathed in a way that sounded like he wanted to talk and couldn't. I crossed the room and yanked the monitor cable loose. The screen stayed on. I pulled the power cord from the back. It stayed lit a beat longer than it should have, then finally went dark. The hallway stayed silent. I leaned toward the door and pressed my ear near it without unlocking anything. I couldn't hear breathing. I couldn't hear fabric shifting. I couldn't hear footsteps walking away. Just the building's normal hum and a distant door closing somewhere on the floor. Jade stayed between the door and the rest of us, shoulders squared like she could block whatever was on the other side just by standing there. We did practical things because practical things are what you reach for when you don't have any better tools. Miles checked the lock, then checked it again. Evan dragged his desk chair closer to his bed like he wanted distance from the door. I turned on every light we had overhead and lamps until the room looked harsh and flat and ugly. I crawled under my desk and unplugged the entire power strip, not just the monitor, everything. PC tower, speakers, chargers, all of it. Any wire felt like a path. Then nothing happened. A few minutes passed, maybe more. Time got slippery. No steps, no knob, no screen waking. That quiet window almost worked. I felt my shoulders drop. I realized I'd been holding my breath. My brain tried to build a normal explanation. A drunk kid in the hall, a random power glitch, a monitor setting, anything. Evan let out a shaky laugh that didn't turn into humor. Miles rubbed his palms on his sweatpants like he needed friction to stay grounded. Jade didn't sit down. She kept staring at the door. I told myself it was over. Then I plugged the power strip back in just to prove we could go back to normal. The PC booted clean. The screen came on, desktop loaded, and the icon was there. The game icon, sitting on my desktop like it belonged there. Same spot, same little square. My chest tightened so hard it felt like a bruise. Evan leaned in first, face pale, voice not playful anymore. "You're messing with me, right?" Evan asked again, but this time it sounded like he needed me to say yes so he could breathe. I didn't answer him. I couldn't make any words fit. I clicked the icon and hit delete. It vanished. For a second, the room loosened, like we'd proved something, like we'd won a tiny fight. Then it came back. Not after a restart, not after a refresh. It blinked back into place like the desktop itself had decided it was permanent. Jade pointed at the screen without taking her eyes off it. Shut it down, for real. I tried. I deleted again. It returned. I dragged it. It snapped back. I restarted the computer. It returned. I shut down, waited, turned it back on. It returned. I opened the file location. It didn't go anywhere that made sense. Like it didn't have a home. Like it was just an instruction to appear. Miles hovered behind me, breathing through his nose, trying not to let fear turn into a spiral. "I didn't touch it," Miles said again, softer this time, like he was talking to himself as much as to us. He ran his hands through his hair and forced the same boundary line back into place. Okay, we're not doing this." Miles said it like he could make it true by repeating it, but none of it mattered. The icon didn't behave like a file. It behaved like a decision someone else had made. I felt my voice come out small, not screaming, not shaking. Just tired in a way that made me hate myself. It won't go. We stood in that cramped dorm room with the lights blasting, all four of us staring at a single square on my desktop. The hallway outside was quiet. The door was still. The radiator hissed. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed at something on a phone like the world was normal. And the feeling from the street came back, sharper now, because it wasn't just outside. Not anxious, targeted. I didn't understand what it was. I didn't understand how it had crossed anything. I only understood the simplest part, the part my body had been trying to tell me since the streetlight. This wasn't staying on the screen. After that night, I stopped trying to solve it. Solving meant there was a clean answer somewhere, a setting, a file, a normal reason that would make Miles relax and let Evan joke again. But every time I reached for an explanation, the situation moved like it was listening. Not to the computer, to me. So I changed what I was doing. I treated it like a pattern problem, not a mystery. I wrote things down in my notes app, short and ugly. Time, what I touched, what I tried, what happened after. I didn't let myself add theories, just input and response. The first rule showed up fast. If I tried to delete it, it came back harder. Not just the icon, the room. The second rule showed up right behind it, and I hated it. If I opened the game, the pressure eased, not like a miracle, more like a hand unclenching. The hallway felt farther away. The door felt like a door again. At first I told myself that was just relief. Like, of course I felt better when I gave in, because my body wanted the conflict to stop. That didn't prove anything. It proved I was human. So I set up a test that didn't depend on my mood. I waited until midday, when the building was loud and normal. Doors opening, people laughing in the hall, somebody dragging a laundry bag down the corridor. I wanted witnesses and noise. I wanted the dorm to feel solid. Evan sat on his bed, trying to look casual and failing. Miles stood behind my chair, arms folded, eyes locked on my screen. Jade showed up a little later and didn't sit down. She stayed near the door with her arms crossed, like she didn't trust the lock anymore. I put my phone on the desk and started a voice memo. Not because I thought it would catch anything supernatural, but because I wanted timestamps I couldn't argue with later. Then I kept it simple. I left the desktop alone for a full hour. No clicking, no hovering. I forced myself to keep my eyes off that corner of the screen, like looking at it counted as touching it. When nothing happened, I did the first input. I clicked the icon and hit delete. It vanished, clean and normal. We waited. It came back. Not after a restart, not after a refresh. It blinked back into the same spot like the desktop had decided it belonged there. I tried again, slower. Dragged to trash, empty trash. I watched the empty space where it had been like I could keep it empty by force. It returned anyway. I felt the words come out without any drama, just flat. It reacts to me. Miles leaned closer, brows pinched, like he needed that sentence to become technical. Like, to your input? I nodded, but input didn't feel like just clicks. It felt like attention, like control. Like the moment I decided I was going to push it, the room leaned back. To prove that, I tried smaller pushes. I didn't delete it. I right-clicked and tried to rename it just to see if I could. The cursor blinked in the name field for half a second. Then the highlight snapped off like somebody had pressed escape. I tried to move the icon into a folder. It slid halfway, then returned to its exact spot like it was on a rubber band. Every time I tried to change it, even gently, the room tightened for a second, like a pressure wave. I deleted it a third time, mostly out of stubbornness. The icon disappeared. And the hallway outside our room got quiet in a way that didn't match the rest of the floor. Like sound had been turned down in a narrow strip of air just beyond our door. Miles lifted a hand, and we all listened. Then the doorknob turned once, slow, careful. Jade's voice cut through the silence like she'd been holding it back all day. "So stop feeding it." I didn't answer, because she was right, and that made me feel trapped. If attention was food, then fighting it was a meal. And if fighting it was a meal, then every fix was just me putting my hand in the cage again. I tried deleting it one more time anyway. The icon came back. The hallway sound returned. The doorknob stayed still, like it had proven the point. That's when I said the other rule out loud, the one my body had already learned. It doesn't like deletion, no one argued. Miles didn't give me a theory. Evan didn't laugh. Jade didn't soften. Then I did the second input. I double-clicked the icon and opened the game. The loading screen came up, fans spun, and the room changed. Not in a cinematic way, in a small physical way. The air stopped feeling aimed. The hallway went back to being a hallway full of other people's noise. The door stopped feeling like a throat. We closed it. The pressure crept back. We opened it. The pressure eased. We tried it again and again until Miles stopped looking for coincidence. Even Evan stopped shifting around like he wanted to run. He just watched my hands in the door, learning the same awful timing I was learning. It wasn't perfect, but it was consistent. Deletion pulled it closer. Opening held it in place. My intent was the trigger, not the time of day, not stress. That was the partial truth, not what it was, not where it came from, just how it behaved. It responded to attention and control. The moment I tried to decide its fate, it answered by testing mine. Once I saw that, the solutions got smaller. If I kept trying to erase it, I was inviting the hallway back into the room. If I kept opening the game to calm the room down, I was giving it a seat on my desk every day like that was normal. Jade stepped closer to my desk, eyes hard on the screen. I looked at Evan and Miles, then at Jade, and said it before I could talk myself out of it. "I'm going to do one last thing." Jade didn't nod. She didn't ask what. She turned it into a contract. "Then we're done. Promise." I nodded because saying yes out loud felt like feeding it too. My last move wasn't brave, it was just a limit. If the game acted like a container, then I'd use it like one, but on my terms. Not as entertainment, not as a habit. As a box I kept closed until it started pressing at the edges. I stopped deleting the icon. I stopped dragging it around. I left it sitting there like a stain I refused to scrub. Then I changed my life around one rule. I didn't open the game unless the room started to tighten. That ruined me a little, because it turned my days into monitoring. It turned my nights into listening. I slept with a light on. I kept my headphones unplugged. I taped over my webcam even though I knew tape shouldn't matter. I unplugged the whole PC when I left for class like I was leaving a stove on. I turned my monitor toward the wall when I wasn't using it, like denying it a face-to-face mattered. And when the hallway got too quiet, when the air started to feel aimed again, when I caught myself staring at the doorknob like it was going to breathe. I'd open the game for a few minutes, just long enough for the pressure to ease, then close it again. I didn't understand what that made me. I just knew the rule worked, not perfectly, not forever, but enough to prove it wasn't random. I still didn't know what it was. I only knew how it reacted, and knowing that meant I couldn't pretend it was a glitch anymore. Glitches don't negotiate. They don't respond to your intent. They don't wait for you to make a choice so they can answer it. Whatever this was, it did. And that meant my last move wasn't really a move. It was a routine I built around it, a way to get through days without pulling on the leash. I started skipping late walks. I started doing homework in the library just so I didn't have to sit in my room with that icon in my peripheral vision. Evan stopped asking if I was okay because he didn't know what to do with the answer. Miles kept offering fixes he didn't believe in. Jade came by less, like my room had become a bad habit too. I didn't feel brave anymore. I felt managed. I slept with a light on, not bright, just enough that the room never went fully dark. I stopped wearing my headset unless I had to. I kept my phone face down. I started doing work in the library just so I didn't have to sit at my desk with that glow in the corner of my vision. I changed my routes at night. I took streets with more windows and more people, even if it added 10 minutes. I stopped cutting through quiet blocks. I started watching reflections without meaning to. Glass doors, parked car windows, the black surface of my laptop when it was off. I'd catch my own face and flinch like it didn't belong to me. Evan and Miles didn't joke about the game anymore. Evan still tried to act normal, but he'd go quiet if the hallway got too quiet. Miles stopped offering fixes. He'd stare at my desktop sometimes like he was trying to remember what a shortcut was supposed to be. Jade checked on me like I was fragile. She'd text first. She'd knock and wait longer than normal. When she was in the room, she didn't sit with her back to the door. She didn't look at my screen unless she had to. For a while, it felt like the routine worked. No doorknob turns, no monitor waking on its own. The hallway stayed a hallway. The icon stayed an icon. I opened the game only when the air started to tighten, and I hated myself for how quickly my body learned to feel the difference. Weeks passed like that. Not good weeks, just survivable ones. Then it looped back in a way that made my stomach drop. I was in a computer lab on campus working on something boring and real, with rows of other students doing the same. I logged into a normal system. Nothing to do with my PC, nothing to do with my room. The kind of screen you see 1,000 times and never think about. A small status box popped up in the corner, like it was confirming a file save or a sync, and it had one word in it: Thomas. Not my username, not my email, just my first name, sitting in a place it didn't belong, in the same clean, plain font as everything else. I stared at it long enough that the screen timed out and dimmed. When I moved the mouse, the box was gone. Nobody around me reacted. No one looked up. No one asked what I was staring at. My hands went cold anyway. That night back in my dorm, I heard a tiny sound from my desk. Not a knock, not a footstep, a soft, familiar click, like a menu selection you make without thinking. My monitor wasn't on. My PC was unplugged, but my body still felt a small camera snap inside my head, like something had just pulled focus. I didn't open the game. I didn't touch my mouse. I didn't go to the door. I just sat on my bed under that weak light and listened to the building breathe. After a while, I whispered the only sentence that still felt true. It's still here.